That request has already been put in.
Good evening, everyone. The Puyallup City Council meeting for January 23rd, 2024 will come to order. Will everyone please rise for a pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. Will the clerk please call roll call?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Dorr,
Present.
Councilmember Adler,
Present.
Councilmember Whitting,
Present. Sorry, I heard.
Councilmember Whitting,
Present.
Councilmember Gilliam,
Present.
Councilmember Johnson,
Like you said, the clerk present.
Deputy Mayor King. Present. Mayor Castema.
Present. I'd like right now to acknowledge any students from Puyallup High School or any of the other schools in the district who are present. I see we have some youth here. We like to acknowledge the youth because frankly, they're our future leaders and we hope we're good examples for them and they someday want to serve the people of Puyallup as these individuals are. So thanks for youth for being here. With that, we're going to move on for the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll now move into citizens' comments. Will the clerk please provide information for the citizens and their comments?
Yes, sir. This part of the meeting is for general citizen comments. Please reserve any public hearing testimony to that section of the agenda. The mayor will call on those who have provided their names in advance. Then the mayor will call for other citizens who wish to speak. For the record, please state your name and address or city council district in which you reside. Please direct your comments to the council as a whole, not individual council members. All comments are limited to 3 minutes. The clerk will provide verbal notice when only 30 seconds remain. And as a reminder, this portion of the meeting is council's opportunity to hear from the community and not a time to engage in debate. Lastly, per state law, this public comment period cannot be used to speak in support of or in opposition to a ballot measure or individual candidacy, and no such comments will be allowed.
Thank you. We always invite citizens to make comments. You'll come forward to that podium right there. To do so, we would ask that you fill out one of these forms that are available from the city clerk right there. And then I'll go ahead and receive those and I'll announce you as you come up and we'll do those in order. First, I would like to ask Nicole Gould, please.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Gould. I live on 7th Street Northwest here in Puyallup. I'm a wife to Nathan, mom to 2, behavior analyst by trade, and a proud Puyallup citizen. Last week, 2 suspects attempted to steal our Hyundai Kona from our driveway on 9th Street in Puyallup. 2 days later, those same suspects returned and attempted to steal my mother's Kia from our driveway at 8:30 at night. I caught them. My husband pursued them. The cops caught up with them, and the suspect's getaway car sped from sight. My husband told them of where they were heading, and the officers seemed to steel themselves for a reality which it seems they face daily. They are unable to pursue and thus unable to deliver justice. Order is the word that comes to mind as I am reeling from these events and seeking to answer the question that my 4-year-old son asked me after our Kona was damaged. Mom, I thought the Kia boys were in jail. How did they get us again? Our Sorrento was stolen just 5 months ago. My son is afraid and I am furious. How did they get us again? That question led me to speak with a number of agencies, council members, the offices of state representatives, as well as detectives. As I gathered data to analyze, the behavior analyst in me began to formulate an answer as to why two people, likely juveniles, had the audacity to hang out in my driveway for 35 minutes and try to steal two of our cars before my oldest was even in bed. They are convinced in their own mind that the risk of getting caught committing such crimes and the consequences afterward do not outweigh the reward of whatever thrills their evil minds have concocted. It was during my research into answering this question that I came to understand that you on city council know the issue. The state representatives know the issue. The police especially know what the problem is. The majority party in this state is not interested in hearing how the laws that they establish have failed. There will not be a hearing or a committee meeting where evidence rules the day and mistakes will not be rectified. Our collective voice will be heard when an initiative, if any, is passed to restore the pursuit laws. This is why I'm here tonight, to ask that in the coming months, as opportunities arise to support raising awareness or promoting understanding of informing the public of the responsibility that they have, you will join me. Your wives, husbands, children, church members, relatives, and anyone with whom you have a private relationship can help support this effort.
30 seconds.
Oh, if I can get to the second page. We will do this because property crime is not a victimless crime. We will do this for this generation of Kia boys, to reiterate that there is law and order, and that for crime there is punishment. We do this to avoid slipping into a culture of criminality and of vigilantism. We will do this for the younger generations to show them that behavior has consequences and that a getaway vehicle is not a loophole. We will do this for those who are left
Mr. Mayor,
feeling unsafe,
the speakers reached 3 minutes.
Nicole, please wrap up.
to restore the public sense of safety and actual safety. We will do this because it is right, and doing what is right is something we can always pursue.
Thank you, Nicole. The next is Paul Romich.
Thank you, Mayor Casima. Last week, Sound Transit had a meeting for their Rider Experience and Operations Committee, and as such, was presented to them, and they decided on that they will be making some service updates to the Sound Transit Express bus routes, which service Puyallup. And I'm just here to inform you, just in case I didn't hear about it. So. The first and foremost, our primary one is the 578 that runs to Seattle through Sumner, Auburn, and the Federal Way Transit Center. And then we also have the 590, or 580, which serves South Hill to Puyallup. And that one is a bit redundant, so it makes sense that they're suspending all service for that. And because they now have, that only really services the park and ride at South Hill. Then the red lot, which I think their contract with Sound Transit contract is up with using that for parking. So it makes sense that that's being suspended. But the 578 is a little baffling to me, given that they're also suspending the 577 during the midday, as well as reducing some hours on that. So the 577 is very similar to the 578, except it just goes to Federal Way and the transit center there. And currently, the 578 services probably 1/3 to half of the riders on the 578 out of Seattle are Federal Way Transit Center bound. So doing this, removing a lot of the service for the 577 will impact Puyallup residents, as the 578 is already crowded and people are getting left at the bus stop. Just last week, if you check out the Seattle subreddit right now, or just last night, sorry, a rider who is in a wheelchair was left at the bus stop because the bus was full. And this is in accordance with policy, because not all riders have visible disabilities, but this is a symptom of just not enough service. So removing service and reducing service on these routes will impact us quite severely and put more cars on the road, increasing traffic, and everyone loves traffic. So that's I guess just a little update for you. And these aren't effective until March.
30 seconds.
So there might be some time to sway some minds. But the 578 is also not immune from these cuts. 578 will be, 578 is not immune. They'll be suspending some evening trips. Currently, the latest trip out of Seattle is around 11 p.m. If they, for each hour they move that up, each half hour they move that up, that greatly restricts people's mobility outside of cars. So I encourage you to reach out to the stakeholders.
Mr. Mayor, the
with some
speaker has
things
reached 3
aboard
minutes.
and try to push back on some of these changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul. Are there any other members of the audience who would like to make comments on any matter pertaining to state issue or city issues? Anyone? If not, we will move on to the next agenda, which is the agenda item is presentations and proclamations. And we are actually very honored today to have members of the Good Samaritan Hospital who are here. The president of Good Samaritan Hospital, Jim Beatty, is here, and other members of the hospital staff. I can see them here too. If you would like to come forward, Jim, and also Chris Beal, planner, if you could come forward. I do have a particular order in presenting this master plan.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, we do have an order for the presentation. City staff will do about 10 slides, and then Jim will come up and finish off the PowerPoint.
Okay, thank you. Jim, is that okay? Okay, go ahead, proceed, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. My name is Chris Beal. I'm a senior planner here with Development and Permitting Services. So tonight we're going to give you a brief overview of the Good Samaritan Master Plan, Good Samaritan Hospital Master Plan update. Okay. Good Samaritan is proposing a new 20-year master plan approval that would govern the future development and build out of the campus itself. Previous master plan and an environmental impact statement was approved in 2003 and a major amendment in 2007. That was a 10-year approval, and that previous approval expired around 2017. So master plan approvals, for some council members, this is fairly familiar. We just went through a process with Pierce College about a year ago to update their master plan for their campus. But for folks that are new or folks that don't know or don't remember, master plans are currently in our municipal code. They're fairly unique. City council is not typically involved in land use actions or land use approvals, but master plans are fairly unique for specific types of uses. Things like the hospital, both college campuses in town. The high school is also eligible for master plans. So certain types of larger campus style developments within the city are eligible for master plans. Not all developments are eligible for master plans, but larger campuses where we have larger impacts are authorized under our municipal code to apply for a master plan. The master plan does a few different things. One, it gives a longer review and a longer approval timeline for bigger projects with larger and more complex build out periods. It also allows for an increased level of public review. So this goes through our planning commission for public hearings. Typically larger developments like this proposal also have environmental impact statements that go with them and have their own separate public review and public input process. And so this project is basically going through both of those review processes kind of in a parallel way, the master plan and EIS. So this is an oblique as part of their application. There are two major phases. There's individual buildings within each of those phases, but this kind of gives you the top-down perspective as if you were looking, I believe it would be northeast as an aerial view. So in this image, you'll see the Dally Tower, the existing patient care tower is building F right here. The main initial phase as part of this proposal is an additional patient care tower. So it essentially is kind of a twin building that would go just off to the east of the existing building. That is really the centerpiece of the phase one build out. As Jim will cover, there is a Department of Health approval process for that, and there actually is a clock that's ticking to get started on that project within essentially the next year and a half. There's a couple other options for expanding parking related to the patient care tower just to the east of that as well. There's an option A and option B parking deck. And then there's a few other smaller ancillary additions to their utility plant and some remodeling and addition work to the ER. This is the site plan that kind of shows you an overhead of how that would lay out new patient care tower just to the east of the existing Dally Tower and the two options for the parking decks. This is the full build out, the full 20-year build out of the proposed master plan. So you've got a lot of things going on here. You've got the care tower as part of phase one. the two optional parking garages, so probably you would only see one of those parking garages at the end. There are two additional medical office buildings that are proposed. So if you ever go to the campus coming off of 15th to the main roundabout in the main lobby area for Dally, there's an existing medical office building right there at 14th and 5th. And then there would be two proposed medical office buildings of 100,000 square feet apiece, roughly, and additional parking associated with that. Further build out, there would be a central support tower, which would help support both of the towers, potential expansion of the Dally Tower towards 3rd Street, and then some of the other things you saw in the phase 1, including the utility plant expansion and the blue here for the emergency room department. And this is an overhead view of those. In the EIS, we are actually studying an alternative that would build one fewer medical office building to determine what the traffic impacts would look like related to a lower build option. This is actually a table that just kind of shows you at a snapshot the general square footages and build out phases. You can see again that even within each individual phase, there's 1A, B, and C, and those are basically timed. There's a more detailed timeline within the master plan that gives years that are anticipated of those to be built, as well as those medical office buildings and expansions. So the Good Sam indicates a need for additional 249 beds by 2036 to meet the community and the regional needs. The new patient care tower is currently licensed, as I understand it, from Department of Health for 160 inpatient beds plus 30 observational beds. So those are sort of less than 24-hour type of situation. There would be a shell floor, so kind of an empty floor within the new patient care tower. It could house an additional 40 beds that would need to be licensed. So the maximum total build out of the new patient care tower would be 200 additional beds plus 30 observational beds for 230 total. And again, as I mentioned, the two medical office buildings and other expansions, additions, and additional parking are part of the other phases. So we've done some public outreach already. We've actually had a couple of public meetings. We've issued a notice of an EIS. We've done public meetings with public agency folks, and we've also briefed the Planning Commission, although it's been a few months now. That was basically in the middle of last spring. And we're kind of full force working on an environmental impact statement right now. That's the main piece that we're working on at the moment. We anticipate that process to parallel the master plan process throughout 2024 as we get closer to the Planning Commission public hearing and making a recommendation to the council. We haven't had a lot of comments from the public so far. We've done mailers of the surrounding area. We've done signboards throughout the campus. We've done the standard legal ads and those type of things. We haven't received too many general public comments, but we have received quite a few comments from our providers at Central Pierce and other fire department providers, particularly about capacity in the ambulance bays, emergency vehicle turning movements, parking for ladder trucks, and other roadway improvements that would help facilitate better services, not only for Central Pierce. There's a lot of different fire and emergency rescue providers that come to the hospital. Central Pierce is just the main one for this specific area. We actually had an on-campus meeting last week with Good Sam leadership, a number of city staff, some of the deputy fire marshals with Central Pierce to view the issues with the ambulance bays and to talk through some of the fire department related issues. So we're making some good progress there. And I think this is my last slide, and I'll turn it over to Jim unless there's questions for me before then. This is kind of a general timeline of where we're at. So we've done EIS scoping at the end of 2022 and the beginning of 2023. Good Sam applied for their master plan right at the beginning of 2023. We provided Planning Commission an overview of that initial application in April of 2023. We anticipate going back to Planning Commission probably in the next month or two for further review, leading up to likely a public hearing right around, probably we'll say summer, early summer. We anticipate a draft EIS to be published right around the same time that we're working through the master plan public hearing, the final EIS being published in the fall, and then the city council taking final action on the master plan within the winter. And again, the thing that we've all got our eyes focused on is the need to work with Good Sam to get them to a permit submittal for the new patient care tower. The final EIS has to be published before the council takes action on the final master plan, so they're all kind of intertwined with each other. But we are working very hard with Good Sam to try to make sure that we meet their timelines so there's no delays on the new patient care tower. So that's the last slide that I had. Mayor, I can answer any questions now, or I can sit down and let Jim.
We have questions, to staff by members. I have Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. So I appreciate the efforts in the meeting. I was briefed on the meeting last week with Central Pierce and the hospital. That is an ongoing issue that I've heard about quite a bit for council's information. Sometimes like with a medic call, depending on what it is, the whole crew, they'll respond with an engine and a medic, but the crew will jump into the medic to aid that individual in crisis. The engine has to follow down to pick up their crew. So the engine is an issue, trying to get the engine in and out of that area, as well as they've indicated they've run into some backlog. There's police spots and they can't get around it, or it affects their response time. So my question is that was brought up again to me yesterday. I appreciate that you guys are all working through that. When it comes to the final decision, where's council's role in that particular issue?
It's a really good question, council member. So there's a couple different things going on within the ambulance bays themselves. We had police at our meeting last week as well. Greg Massey was there. So we have a couple of parallel parking stalls that are within the ambulance bay. When the ambulance bay fills up, we do have a turning radius issue when there are police vehicles parked within the ambulance bays themselves. Good Sam is actually already working on a voluntary fix to move those out of the ambulance bay and convert some of the ADA stalls that are in front of the building. They likely can't convert all of them because you do need to have a minimum number of ADA stalls near the emergency department, but to swap some of those that are allowed to be swapped by the building code to move police out of there. The other thing that's actually the low-hanging fruit is the engine issue. We actually think we can probably just remove some on-street parking on 3rd. In talking to Central Pierce, it doesn't necessarily need to be extremely close to the ambulance bays. It could be on the east side or the west side of 3rd. It just needs to be a dedicated fire lane. When we were in the field last week, we scoped a location. We just need to talk to our traffic engineer and streets operation to see if we can stripe that and sign it. It likely can be an easy fix, and that could actually help solve a lot of things. The capacity itself is the other issue. So the bays have a specific amount of locations for ambulances. We did look at in the field whether it's technically feasible to add additional bays. It appears that it is, but we don't necessarily have a proposal from the applicant to do that. That's not Good Sam's proposal. So I would say we're sort of in a transition point of like, how do we do this? Is that going to be a mitigation measure as part of the EIS? Or would that be a recommendation that's part of the master plan? Or it could be both. So I don't necessarily have an answer for you quite yet. I could follow up with you on that. We actually have a debrief scheduled with our consultant. I think there are definitely ways. The applicant is committed to fixing the ambulance bay issue in a response letter to us and said that they would be willing to work with us. Their architect was present at the meeting and said that they could look at some options. We don't yet have a pathway on that, but we do seem to have cooperation and an understanding that there needs to be a fix.
Okay, and then moving the police out of that area, is that cause for concern? I don't know in what specific incidents that they're parked there.
Yeah, police actually said as long as they're close to the emergency room, whether it's in the ADA stalls near the turnaround or within the bay, that's completely fine with them either way.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions? If not, thank you, staff. Appreciate that, Chris. Let's move on. President Jim Beatty, thank you for being here. Let me just preface your presentation by saying that, there aren't really many institutions that are integral to Puyallup as much as Good Samaritan Hospital is. We understand that it's a tremendous asset to this community, and it's always been since, of course, for decades, it has been a prized entity in this community. And then Multicare, when they came in, I think gave a management expertise and also capital behind that really helped build it into something that has become far more regional. And we see that those are your plans in the future. And we're very pleased that you would choose Puyallup as that place to potentially even be maybe your flagship hospital. So with that, please proceed.
Well, thank you, Mayor Cassim. As my teammates know, I already call Good Sam a flagship hospital. That caused some consternation over in Tacoma, but that's the way we feel about it. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to all of you this evening. and I have a relatively short agenda. I want to provide some information on our patient service growth. I want to cover enabling infrastructure overview. I want to also spend some time describing the patient care tower, which is really the first phase of the master plan and certificate of need scope. Provide a brief on our current campus assessment, and then speak to the need for the campus master plan and the timeline, and then finish with questions. So I'd like to start with Multicare Good Samaritan's vision, which is to provide comprehensive services by leveraging the strength of Multicare's community-based healthcare system. We want ease of access to high-quality services and seamless care transitions as close to home as possible. Multicare Good Samaritan Hospital will be the East Pierce community's provider of choice for elective healthcare services. We know we're already the provider for emergency services. I don't know if council knows, but with our OCEDs, our off-campus emergency departments, and our main ED, we see 162,000 patients a year. We are the third largest emergency department in the United States. So we are now looking for the community to entrust their elective care to us as well. So East Pierce is a large and growing community, and this says East Pierce PSA, which is primary service area, and that's where Good Samaritan gets 70% of its inpatient admissions. That's how the area is defined. If you look at the 2024 population, what you see in the dark green are the areas that are more densely populated, and on the right side in the 5-year percentage change, you see that the darker areas are growing more rapidly than the other lighter ones. The state's forecasted growth, the state of Washington, is 4% growth over 5 years. And actually East Pierce's overall growth is about 5% higher than the state average. But we actually have areas, namely South Hill, growing at 7%, and Bonnie Lake is growing at 8%. So we're clearly overall a fast growing area. So Good Samaritan's patient growth has been robust, to say the least. In this graph on the left side on the vertical axis, you'll see the average daily census by bed number. And then along the horizontal axis is year by year and statistics with those, with the blue histograms. You can see how the volumes have continued to grow. The blue histogram is the average daily census that we take at midnight, but that's the average census. And so there are transitory times where we have as many as 440 to 450 patients in Good Samaritan Hospital with a license of 375 beds. You can see the admit rates, and you can see even with the growth and the addition of 80 beds for the Dally Tower 5 and 6 and Dally 7 and 8, we still continue to grow and see high patient volumes. So that is the executive summary. East Pierce's County is growing as a growing healthcare market. Good Samaritan continues to operate at very high inpatient occupancy percentage, and we need additional inpatient capacity to maintain the quality of care and the service levels that are expected by our community. So now on to enabling infrastructure, and Chris touched upon some of these things, but the certificate of need process is intended to help ensure that facilities and new services that healthcare providers propose are needed for quality patient care in a particular region in the community. And in accordance with the Washington Department of Health 2021 certificate of need, there's an undersupply of acute care beds in East Pierce County. And Chris had covered the numbers, but it's 137 over 4 years, 176 over 10 years, and 249 over 15 years. That references starting those numbers in 2021. And in August of 2023, Multicare Good Samaritan received approval from the Department of Health for 160 additional licensed beds and other improvements to existing hospital infrastructure to help meet our community need. And the licensed inpatient beds would be located in a tower that's connected to the Dally Tower. This is just same picture that you saw briefly, just the relative position of the A, which is the proposed tower, to Dally, which is the brown structure on the left. This is just a diagram for how those spaces match up exactly. You can see Dally Tower is 8 floors, and the new tower would be the same and would be roughly the same size as well. So the Dally Tower is represented to the left, and then in its square footages for each floor, and the new tower is on the right. And you can see if you start at 8 and 7, 6, and 5 from the top, The Dally has 40 beds, and so would the new tower would have a matching 40 beds, connected hallways, the exact same service line for all those, for those patients. And then you can see the mechanical shelled space that he referenced, which is, has the availability to add 40 beds. And then on the third floor, which is the main floor of Good Sam, we have 30 observation beds, which are not licensed, but nonetheless are beds will move from the older part of the hospital to the newer part because they're more proximate to the services that we want those people to have. Below the third floor, actually on the third floor, you can see in the Dally catheterization lab and imaging. And then below that on the second, surgery and emergency room on the first floor in the loading dock. We don't need to replicate those. We'll have those connected to the new tower, but we won't need to add that. So when you see the difference in those square footages, that's primarily what the difference is. I'm sorry, I should move. So just real briefly, for enabling infrastructure, you can see the Dally Tower there on the lower part of the screen, and then Meadow, all the names are, as you can see, as Meadow and River and such. When you get over to the right and upper right, the river part, we start to see that there's aging infrastructure that we need to upgrade and modernize. So we know there's a need and support the need for a campus master plan, and the Good Samaritan Campus Master Plan maintains alignment with the City of Puyallup's comprehensive plan, which establishes the following goals related to healthcare development. To ensure that sufficient land is designated for medical use to maintain the city's position as a regional provider of medical services. Encourage and facilitate a master plan for Good Samaritan Hospital to guide long-term land use and to provide opportunity for input from and establish measures of protection for the surrounding residential neighborhoods. And to encourage and support the medical community as an economic and employment driver in the city and East Pierce County. So Good Samaritan is Puyallup's only acute care facility. And we're relied upon by a large and diverse community in East Pierce County. And the campus master plan outlines a vision to meet certificate of need obligations and provide access for modern healthcare services for a growing population. It's a schematic of the timelines, but the takeaways are that the critical schedule elements that are outlined in the bottom. The project contemplated by the certificate of need must be commenced by August of 2025. The issuance of the final environmental impact survey and approval of the campus master plan is necessary prior to approval of permits to meet the August 2025 commencement date. And nevertheless, Multicare intends to proceed at risk with design work and permits this year in order to meet our project schedule. And that is all I have in terms of presentation. I'll be happy to answer questions or your comments.
Any questions, comments by members? Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. It's always good to get updates directly from the source and to hear what's going on. We do touch bases, I think, a few years ago, and it's nice to get updated. Appreciate that as well. One of the things I appreciate about Good Sam is not only the care that's provided for the residents of our area and visitors in the surrounding area, but also the economic driver of economic development and jobs in our area. So I'd love to find out in this comprehensive plan, and if this is going to be the flagship area, wouldn't it be nice to develop some educational partnerships with some of the educational institutes here in Puyallup to provide job training for those that would perhaps want to work in the same region? So as you know, we've got Fort Steilacoom or Pierce College here, part of Fort Steilacoom. And then, we have kind of a hidden gem of WSU Extension Campus right down here that if the right program came along, there's plenty of land there to expand and to do a WSU nursing or physician training. So are there partnerships in the future that are being discussed to create a local education center that would allow students and residents to study here and then perhaps even begin to work here all kind of in one package regional area?
We sure do. We have programs with existing partners, and there's going to be an announcement here in a couple of weeks that's going to talk about expanding those partnerships. I've also met with some of the college representatives to help us with developing not just nursing, but all the other specialties and things that we need, technologists and folks that support ancillary departments. And so we're very much partnering and always willing and open to partner with additional folks to build our staff and build the talent base here to serve at Good Sam.
Yeah. So will there be any conversations with, as mentioned, the specific institutions that are already here? We know that you're partnering with some unknown education centers, but will there be some conversations and expansion upon the two campuses here in Puyallup for discussions?
When you say expansion of the plans themselves?
Yeah, partnering and say, hey, listen, we have shortages in these roles and we'll partner with you to provide some kind of education so that you can train students and they of course have the opportunity to apply and work for Good Sam, perhaps with those two specific institutions. We know there's probably some great ones with the UW Tacoma and probably other TCC and whatever, but specifically the Puyallup ones, are there conversations or could there be conversations with them to develop a partnership since it's kind of local?
Yes, sir, there are all those folks. I'm not referring to TCC and the other in West Pierce. I'm talking about the college and institutions we have here in East Pierce County.
Okay, will there be some announcement on some of those partnerships you referred to so we can at least know what's coming forth?
Some are ongoing, but yes, they will. They're not a secret. We're in the process of developing additional ones with them for other specialties.
Can you tell me what you're doing now then and what's coming up? What partnerships do you have and what kind of training are they providing now with these institutions you're referring to?
Well, we have partnerships for nursing. We have right now, we've got a large group of student nurses that we're training at Good Samaritan. That's one way that we need to build out our workforce. And we continue to work, Multicare continues to work locally with all these institutions as well.
Okay, so there's no specifics for Pierce College Puyallup that you can refer to at this point?
Well, I can't speak to them. We have those.
You have those?
We have relationships with them.
I'd be curious to find out. Can we get some information on that? Or what programs are available?
Absolutely.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Beatty, for your presentation. I just want to say that since you've come to Puyallup, how much I appreciated the relationship and the partnership that you've had with the city of Puyallup. We met during the pandemic and that was a fun time for all. So I just appreciate that you're here, that you came down, that you are here and you're answering questions from the public. And that you are definitely, I am aware that you are definitely overcrowded and that this is a needed addition. So I just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate your partnership and being part of our community. And I do know that there is a nursing program at Pierce College. I'm not sure what else, but they do have the Allied Health and Science building, and I know that they are working on that. I can't tell you all the specifics, but I do know that that partnership exists. So I appreciate again that you're taking that step and partnering with our other community partners. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Beatty, thank you so much for being here. I echo the sentiment from my colleague, Councilmember Johnson, and as well as Councilmember Dorr. A couple things. One, would you be able to share with us the number of employees that Good Sam currently has?
About 1,800.
Which is great, of course, and we're very grateful that, as many of my colleagues have said, you continue to choose Puyallup and invest here. To the point about the higher ed institutions that are here in Puyallup, I once upon a time went to Pierce College, Puyallup, and happened to serve as student body president and also helped open the Arts and Allied Health building where the nursing program is stationed. And you know, I, like my colleagues, hope to see the expansion of that partnership, which I'm confident will happen. But also just have to say that, we really do have some fantastic folks in the pipeline. And I have seen firsthand the way that Multicare has partnered, with Pierce College, as well as PLU, which is a huge feeder or a partnership rather here in our backyard. And so, very excited to see what happens. And I know that Pierce College is going to continue to help bolster that. And, again, echo the comments up here, but appreciate you being here and for choosing Puyallup. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for joining us here today and for this great explanation of the plans moving forward. I just had a question regarding the current employment of in the staffing levels at Good Samaritan right now. I know that during the pandemic, there was a loss possibly of nurses and staff during that time. Have we seen a recovery from that? And how how close are we to that recovery? Are we there or are we almost there? And how are we going to manage that moving forward with the new tower? Should it go through and fulfill all of those spaces moving forward?
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. Multicare has undertaken some really robust nursing recruitment. And we, at Good Samaritan on our patient care floors, will be fully recruited by May. So we've seen a lot of good movement there, actually much quicker than we thought that we'd be able to recover. We did lose folks during the pandemic. We had lots of agency nurses. We still have some agency nurses. And what needs to be pointed out is when Good Samaritan opened 7 and 8 Dally, that was opened with agency nurses. So we already had a lot of agency nurses. And obviously we're grateful for people that come and care for our community, but we'd rather have folks that live here and stay here to care for our patients, and we're well on our way. And we'll have to continue the relationships that we're talking about with the universities and the other institutions here to be able to recruit and have enough staff for a new tower.
So staffing is looking better and we are on our way to recovery there, it sounds like, and that's good to hear. And thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Member Johnson, would you like additional comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would. So I want to now focus on something different. I like your vision. I've heard it before about wanting Good Sam to be not only just a great hospital, but really in a sense, a model and flagship hospital, not just for Pierce County, but perhaps Washington State and beyond. Love that vision. It's aggressive. It's good. And why not? So I'd like to offer personally, and I can't speak for the council, but I know for myself personally, if there was a way that we could partner together, let's just say that you want to cast this big vision and it's on a broad scale and you needed to establish connections with X, Y, and Z, whoever they are, institutions, organizations, I think it would be, you would probably find support, at least with me and probably many others, to put together what I call a red carpet delegation. And you want to go and meet with some stakeholder to help you in this vision that as a city official and perhaps others would go with you to that location and support you alongside of your vision to make sure that when they engaging with you, they're just engaging with you, but various stakeholders and sectors within the region or the community or the city that knows, hey, they're not alone, that when you come and invest or expand here, you're not just getting us, but there's support in the community. So I hope you could put that in your back pocket because that might give you the edge as you're having conversations at high levels to bring this broad support beyond just your own staff and yourself, but perhaps city stakeholders and other stakeholders who can come and join with you and share in a common vision to make this place not only a great place to be and invest, but knowing their support for that community-wide level. So take us up on that. If we can help you, I believe that you would find that maybe helpful, maybe distinctive enough to set you apart from other institutions who are probably approaching with the same message.
Well, I will, and I appreciate that. And I'd like to reciprocate. If there's anything that I can do to help the council and with recruiting and things to improve our community, I'm happy to do that as well.
Good. It's community partnership. That's where the power is.
It is.
And as we recognize that, we're going to see our city really grow in all sectors. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. And with that, Jim, if you would like to have a few parting words, but also acknowledge your staff that is here today. I believe that there are a number of your staff members.
They are.
If you'd like to acknowledge them.
That's
please
my
do.
senior. And so first is our chief nursing executive, Christy Hartway, who when you ask the nursing questions, I really just should have pulled her up. She could give you all the answers. She's the nursing expert. And Monica Powers, who's the CEO of our the Good Samaritan Foundation, is here along with her husband, Rob, who's very supportive. Jim Bradley, also known as Jim 2, who's the chief operating officer at Good Samaritan Hospital. I'm Jim 1. And Dr. Robert Corliss, who just the 1st of January, longtime practitioner here, became our full-time chief medical officer at Good Samaritan. So happy to have all of them here and have their support.
Well, I want to thank all of you for being here and for this wonderful presentation, and we look forward to more of these. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good night.
With that, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, 2B, and we'll get an update on the Meeker Festival Street. And let's go ahead and have Hans Hunger, and I believe we have a consultant who will also address us, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Hans Hunger, the city engineer. I'll be introducing Nathan Pulowski as giving the presentation here, but I just wanted to give a little background before we got in there, and Nathan will highlight a little more of that. But this Meeker Festival Street is coming out of a planning exercise that was done throughout 2022 and finished up at the beginning of 2023, the Meridian Streetscapes Plan, where we identified 10 projects for really enhancing our downtown area. And so by adopting that plan, prioritizing it, giving adequate resources, we're moving quickly through on those projects there. And we'll give updates to those projects as we go along. One of the top projects being Meeker Festival Street, and a very important project. It's always good to know the background of a project as you see it moving forward. Why are we doing this and how is it all fitting together? And this really fits into our economic development downtown and trying to revitalize downtown. So you'll see that in the process that we're going through. I really want to thank the council for giving us permission to go through the scoping exercise first before we went into the design. We really, in order to make a festival street effective, you've got to get all the planning elements and buy-in into it. Because when you get this thing done, you want it to be an effective festival street that's used by your community, and it promotes more growth around it and stuff. And so that's really takes a lot of time and effort to get those pieces together. And so with that, that's really what Nathan's going to walk through and show you kind of the pieces that we're putting together to know exactly what we're building. And then I'll follow up a little bit with what are, some next steps for potential funding for this. So I'll turn it over to you, Nathan. Thank you.
Thanks, Hans. Yeah, I'm Nathan Polanski, project manager with the consultant team. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. All right, from an agenda standpoint, what I'd like to do is kind of do a little bit more of a project overview and orientation, building on what Hans just shared. And then we're going to jump into kind of the last 5 or 6 months of our work, doing a recap of the data gathering and public outreach findings that we've had. We've kind of gone through multiple channels to get both technical and sort of community and stakeholder feedback. I'll walk through the proposed design principle and goals and talk through what we are learning from some other cities to inform sort of the conceptual design work that's part of this. So the scope of this project is community engagement and concept development. So we are looking at East Meeker between South Meridian and 3rd Street Southeast. So here you can see our 2-block study area in the public right-of-way. Right to the south of the kind of Cornforth Campbell property redevelopment that's sort of in process and getting underway. In addition to developing a concept design, we are also going to be providing some early thoughts and sort of considerations related to design, but also event and activity considerations, building on what Hans just said is the importance of having a festival street that's really well utilized and a part of the downtown events and activities. As Hans mentioned, this project was one of 2 high priority projects that came out of the Downtown and Meridian Streetscape project. Really looking at this festival street and the downtown wayfinding, those are the 2 things that we heard the community was very interested in, council was very interested in. And so staff has done a great job of kind of getting this Meeker Festival Street project going. As it was planned, we're sort of working through this first concept design phase. Future project phases would include the sort of final design or engineering documents and then construction of that. When we talk about why this project, this is really about providing a space downtown for community events a flexible space that can adapt to those community needs. So something that, functions different than Pioneer Park or the pavilion for the farmers market. Through the Meridian Streetscape project, there was a coordination with Public Works and the realization that in addition to the opportunity that's here, there's also a need to replace public utility infrastructure. So the sanitary sewer line needs to be extended to support future redevelopment. The water main is from 1927 and needs to be replaced. New storm drain system to support the future street. And so there's an opportunity. So when you dig up the street and put something back, let's put something back that better reflects the sort of needs and wants of the community. And then that can also encourage the redevelopment and investment in downtown. And long term, there is an opportunity. And I think one of the kind of strong vision elements of this is how can you better connect downtown with the Meeker Mansion over time? So that's something that we'll be looking at as well. So what is Meeker Festival Street? Here's what the street looks like today. This is looking west from just west of 3rd Street Southeast. Not a particularly compelling streetscape, a lot of adjacent surface parking. But the right side of this picture is where the planned Cornforth Campbell redevelopment is going to go. So a Festival Street is a street that has no curbs, that has more amenities for people gathering, amenities for events. And so here is a rendering that was developed during the Downtown Meridian Streetscape project that just suggested what could a reconstructed street look like as a festival street during everyday use. You can see more street trees, amenities, kind of nice kind of sidewalk space planting, and then the idea of how can you activate that with food trucks and events during markets and having a stage set up. And so that's sort of the general idea. What does that look like in real life? So one of the things that through our outreach process and kind of as a part of this, just kind of wanted to introduce what other communities have done in creating festival streets within their community. Here's an example from Hermiston, Oregon. You can see here, a lot of pavement really relies on kind of a variety of pavement materials to delineate spaces, street trees, kind of ballers to help delineate users, but really sort of more of a modern look and feel. Another example, this is in Seattle. This is a project that our office was actually involved in the design on, Bell Street. Here you can kind of see a little bit different approach. This design uses colored pavement to distinguish zones between cars and people. There's a little bit of a chicane to slow vehicles down during everyday use, much larger kind of planting areas and street trees and kind of larger spaces for groups to gather. In Bothell, their downtown Main Street was reconstructed in, I want to say 2019 or 2020. And again, here you see that kind of curbless, flexible design. One of the things that's unique about this street is they've got these sort of short parking bays that have bollards on either side of the parking. So they can, adjacent business owners can work with and coordinate with the city to have the bollards move from the sidewalk zone out to the street edge to kind of create more sidewalk area. But you can see very different looks, feel, aesthetic, materials, depending on what is really desired and sort of needed by the community. And one more Festival Street example. Festival Street is the name. In Ennis, Texas, here you can see a lot wider variety use of materials. Here there's a lot of pavers that really sort of build on that sort of downtown charm, a little more classical feel. But again, just kind of want to show the variety of aesthetics, layout, and design that these festival streets can come in. So from a project process standpoint, we have been working through, we started kind of late summer and have been working through kind of data gathering and initial community outreach and establishing guiding principles. We were starting to move into developing preliminary design concepts. And at the end of this project, the plan is to have a preferred concept design. The outreach process includes a variety of activities. So we have had a series of smaller focus group meetings that we'll talk a little bit more about the feedback, but those are really focused on event and activity coordinators, adjacent business and property owners along the project study area and along Meridian in the downtown area, some larger community events and online surveys, and then the updates that we'll be having here. And so this is the first of 3 project updates. We've met with a technical advisory committee twice that's primarily made up of city staff across departments. Some of the things that we've heard so far is really a desire to maintain two-way traffic on Meeker. Given the one-way couplet that exists on Meridian and 3rd Street today, there is enough wrong-way driving. And so one of the things, as we're thinking about trying to reallocate space and find more space for people during the everyday use, we wanted to talk about traffic flow and circulation. And what we heard from the city's traffic engineer and public works is really a desire to keep two-way traffic. Recognizing our study area is bound by really busy arterials, really thinking about how we can calm traffic that's turning on to the Festival Street during everyday use. There's on-street parking along both sides of the street today. It's relatively underutilized, though it is important to those adjacent business owners. There's 2 large city-owned lots there today, one to the north that will be redeveloped in the future, and then the one to the south that will still be there. The Cornforth Campbell property, we have had 2 coordination meetings with that team so far, and one of the things that will be changing in terms of public street circulation is that 2nd Street Southeast between Main and Meeker will be vacated as a part of that redevelopment. And so the intersection configuration in the future will be different. And so something that we need to take into consideration as we're developing preliminary design concepts. And then the last thing to take away from our technical group is, while there's a strong desire to make a connection to the east across 3rd Street Southeast to the Meeker Mansion, it's really something that is going to need to happen as a part of a future project. So we will plan and be looking at that in terms of developing concepts. But long term, until there's really a pedestrian generator there and showing that there's a demand for that crossing, it's something that would be looking in the future and potentially if and when the Meeker Mansion site redevelops. Infrastructure. So as I mentioned, this is an opportunity for the city. When you're going to go in and rebuild that street, there's an opportunity and a desire to replace that public infrastructure below ground to support sort of the long-term build out. And so, as I mentioned, there'll be new water and sewer that would be part of a future design project. And one of the things that we've heard from several of our outreach groups is the interest in more trees and plants, both for, with Tree City USA designation sort of coming back to the city of Puyallup, and then also that sort of pollinators from a planting standpoint. So late summer, early fall, we had a meeting on site. We were kind of posted up on the corner of the project at 2nd and Meeker, and invited a lot of the adjacent property owners and business owners along the study area to come through. And some of the things that we heard from them are really considering access during events and what the implications are for businesses. We've heard that during Meeker Days and the Daffodil Parade that the kind of bigger street closures really do impact those businesses, and they ultimately tend to close some of them. We've heard from the El Rey Market on the north side, and then also Savory and Sweet on the corner of Meridian. Some of the challenges that they've had to work through in the past. There's also a desire in those retail frontages to have wider sidewalks to support businesses, slowing traffic, and then coordinating with the Cornforth Campbell redevelopment, really recognizing that 0 lot retail development is really important to activate any street, but particularly a street that's going to be sort of created more for people rather than your typical kind of car-oriented downtown street. Events and activities organizers, we had a great meeting with a variety of folks, and there's really strong interest for both new events and existing events and sort of figuring out how they can utilize a new space along Meeker in the future. We talked about the importance of lighting for all times of day and weather, all times of the day and all times of the year, and then also weather considerations and how are there opportunities to build an infrastructure to support those needs during really hot days and kind of dark, cold, rainy days. And then also considering specific event needs and thinking about, what power sources can be there. Are there ways to build in an access to the sewer for food trucks to sort of empty their grease interceptors or tanks at the end of the day or end of an event to kind of really facilitate easy use during events. We also held a virtual open house, fairly lightly attended, but it was posted on Facebook Live, and in addition to virtual presentations, some of the things that we heard really complemented what we heard from our technical advisory committee. The desire for more trees and green spaces, really being thoughtful and thinking about the accessibility of the street. As you change from a normal kind of street sidewalk environment and you eliminate those curbs, how are we incorporating best practices for accessibility so all users can kind of safely and comfortably find their way through? Lighting, parking for businesses, and then something that we've heard from Public Works throughout the process is the maintainability, recognizing there's already a big demand on resources for downtown, maintaining sidewalks, and how can we make sure that we're planning materials that are going to minimize those long-term concerns. The month leading up to Thanksgiving, we had an online survey. We had over 900 people participate. 2/3 of those were residents of the city of Puyallup, and more than 3/4 had been to an event in downtown in the last 6 months. So it was great to know that we were connecting with people within the community and that were coming downtown to events. As we were thinking about the questions we wanted to ask, we really wanted to start thinking about what are some of the decisions that can inform the layout and the structure of a street. And so, building on the things that we were hearing from our interested parties meetings, we asked questions about tree canopy and planting. Overwhelmingly, we heard that there's a desire for more tree canopy downtown to provide that weather protection, to provide that interest year round. And similarly with planting, to really sort of less pavement and sort of a more comfortable streetscape environment. We asked about space for people. Looking at our 60-foot right-of-way, there's a desire to have, where we can, wider sidewalks to support a variety of activities and narrowing that roadway to the extent that's possible and potentially reclaiming some of the parking areas for pedestrian spaces. And then also gathering spaces, a desire to have spaces that can fit groups of people rather than a bench here and a bench there. How can we really support those people, drawing people in, spending time and kind of relaxing along the street? Another question that we asked and through our outreach process was establishing a principle for the project and some goals that would really drive the development of concepts to allow us to sort of evaluate and kind of determine how are we doing through this design process. And so as a guiding principle, what we asked the community was, Meeker Festival Street provides year-round opportunities for people to gather, serves local businesses by creating opportunities for more and expanded events, and increases downtown Puyallup's visibility. And from a goal standpoint, really looking to see how a future festival street and the design of that can increase business activity, create a unique street with a great outdoor environment for people sitting, walking, moving, and then creating a long-lasting plan that's maintainable. So sort of where we're headed, and we've already started to sort of get into this a little bit, but we're going to be developing some preliminary design concepts, meeting with our technical advisory committee group, making refinements to that, and then going back out to the public for what we anticipate to sort of be a hybrid of sort of an in-person and online events. We've been working closely with Eric on the communication side, and we know that there's been a better turnout for online things. And so we're going to start to talk about that sort of future engagement opportunity with the community. And one of the other things that I think is really important, and I kind of shared some of the examples of what a festival street looks like in other communities to see the variety of features that are there. One of the things that staff had the foresight to include in our scope and kind of work through is we're reaching out to other communities in the Puget Sound region to understand what has worked for them, what hasn't worked for them, as they've developed, designed, implemented, and staffed festival streets in their communities. And so we've met with the city of Kirkland. They had downtown Main Street, Park Lane. They reconstructed that street in 2015. And one of the things that they really didn't get in their festival street are utility infrastructure for events. So water hookups to hose down the street, extra power supports that can be metered and charged for events. They don't have a restroom on site or adjacent that's public. And then they've had a lot of problems with bollards and kind of a need for storage. And one of the things that's unique about the Meeker Festival Street project is the opportunity to collaborate and coordinate with the Cornforth Campbell redevelopment site that's happening adjacent. So we are talking to them about, are there opportunities to incorporate a public restroom and storage facilities that are within that parcel and potentially available, during events. Main Street in Bothell, very kind of innovative, creative use of kind of bollards and these shorter parking stalls. But one of the things we heard from them are these bollards are extremely hard to move. They're 400 pounds. They also really limit the flexibility of the street in terms of the number of tents that can be used and the amount of parking. And then in Redmond, Cleveland Street, this project is adjacent to their downtown park. That adjacent park has a lot of electrical infrastructure, so support a variety of uses. So they don't need to have that within the public right of way, which is great for them, but not the same condition that we have. Redmond does have several apartment residences adjacent to their festival street. And so, they were really talking about kind of best practices for communications, thinking about noise complaints. So sort of thinking beyond design and forward in terms of how you operate the street. And a general comment that we've heard from everyone is really the staffing investment to manage the street closures, to go out there, make sure that, parked cars are leaving on time, closing the street. And so as we start to think about process and how to make this successful for the city long-term, starting to have those conversations with staff. So these are conversations we're going to continue to have with agencies to kind of learn and inform what will work best for Meeker Festival Street. And so with that, I think I'm done and I will stop sharing, but I know Hans wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the kind of current funding ideas or grant opportunities.
Yeah, so thank you, Nathan. So as we develop these concepts, it's coming clear kind of what are the amenities we're trying to put in there? What is the overall scope of the project? And we need that as we're trying to move forward into the design and try to secure funding. So one of the opportunities we have coming up here is the next round of competition for PSRC funds coming up. That'll open up this year with applications, pre-screen applications due around April, and in May, the full applications due. So this is funding that will become available in 2027, 2028. So in looking at the timing of this project right now, where we're on the scoping, that would give us time between now and 2027 to finish the design of this. So we're anticipating putting in an application for the Meeker Festival for construction funding there. We'll have to be working closely with the scoping team to figure out exactly, what the amount that we can ask for based on which funds are available when they put out the call for funding or for projects with PSRC. But I did some preliminary scoring on this. And I'm very hopeful on the Meeker Festival. They have different categories for these funds. One is non-motorized improvements. And comparing our scores that I preliminary scored this project based on what the scoring was last year, it'll probably be about the same this year, to the last year's projects. Their scoring was around like the highs of the upper 50s. My score, and maybe I'm a little biased, but it was 64 on this. So I think we have a very good chance at securing some funding. The other thing with that funding source is, although these funds are out to 2027, 2028, PSRC is very interested in keeping those projects moving forward. So as projects are delayed that have already secured funding, then that frees up opportunity for other projects to move faster if you're ready to move faster. Now, there's no doubt, I will say over and over, this is a very complicated funding source. These are federal funds. There's a lot of hoops you have to jump through and make sure you're doing things right with there. But it's also a very reliable funding source and that it comes around. So I think in that sense, I've already talked with City Manager Steve about this, and he's very supportive of, yes, let's get in an application for the construction funding for those this year. So that's the plan right now. We'll use local funds for the design purposes. Right after this scoping gets done, then we'll begin the design phase of there and move that. So I'm very excited about this project. I mean, we work on a lot of different projects, and sewers, well, they're not as sexy as a festival street and stuff. So it's kind of nice to get one that you can see a lot more creativity going into it. And in the end, have such, enthusiasm from the public. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Questions, Councilmember Johnson, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to, before I pose a question to Nathan, I'd like to alert Mr. Mayor and a few others on my council, on our council. As we look at case studies in this last slide here, it said that we look to Kirkland and Bothell and Redmond, which I think are great case studies we should look at, but they haven't been around very long. So their case studies, are very limited. Are we looking at case studies in Europe where they really understand walkability and they've had centuries of case studies to figure out how walkability and how those things are in a downtown core? So I hope that we're looking and inspired by some of those things. We're not Europe, we're Puyallup, but there could be some things that we could really glean from and incorporate that culture of walkability and community in a downtown core center. So I hope that we're looking at that as well. But Nathan, you mentioned something very interesting to me, and this is now I'm not advocating for this, but I just want to ask questions. And as council and as leaders, we can't be afraid to ask just tough questions. Doesn't mean that we do it, but we got to ask the tough questions. But you mentioned, I noticed in the Bothell slide, Nathan, you mentioned that on their downtown core, and I think you mentioned it verbally, that they had some two-way street rather than a one-way street. And so are there any data that a two-way street with narrow roads slows down traffic and creates walkability than is this kind of superstructure highway of one-way streets? Is there any data that we could talk about that we should at least be looking at for Puyallup to consider as we look at walkability, increasing our downtown core with less traffic and more people and more gathering?
Yeah, so I think, from a two-way traffic, there's a predictability component to that for people that are driving, and there's helping kind of access, whether it be driveways, businesses, parking areas, so sort of a redundancy that's built in. Reducing to one lane, you obviously have less space that's needed for vehicle circulation and more space that you can provide for other uses. And so there's sort of a benefit there in terms of thinking about sort of non-daily vehicle spaces.
Yeah. And if we were to study that, just hypothetically, we already have a pretty wide two-way street heading north through our city in a one-way street. Is what, 3rd Avenue? Is it 3rd Street, I guess, running down there? And we do have, if we wanted to create a south one-way to open up the downtown core to two-way streets, we could certainly use the 5th and the Fairview that would connect all the way up and down if you want to do south. So there could be some parallel one-ways that we could divert the typical meridian and travel on each side of those streets and still maintain this walkability. Now, again, I'm not suggesting that we do that, but I also don't want to be ignorant to the fact that we should be studying it from a holistic standpoint to make sure that we're getting the best outcomes on creating this great culture. Now, moving on to some other things, we mentioned the Meeker Festival Street, which I think is fantastic. What wasn't mentioned tonight, but I understand may come up a little bit later, is the 9th Avenue Festival Street by the fair. So we got that one kind of working alongside the fair. I guess it'd be just north of the fair that we're talking about doing. And I also think that somebody should be talking, even though it's a little teeny one, but you got this little teeny Elm Street right here that you can create this kind of festival street right in front of City Hall between the restrooms and the bank here. It's kind of a wasted curb street. Why couldn't that be a little mini festival street for a gathering and food court or whatever? So I think we should be looking at that little half a block that is not a road, but it's certainly right now this kind of half a street that is no through traffic. It just becomes just an exit lane for the bank. So I hope that we're looking at that as a small little mini festival street. Other than that, that's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. I got a little nostalgic as I was looking through this presentation. because I spent many years in the Cornforth Campbell building, running a teen center. So from 2006 to 2017, we had teens on that street doing all sorts of activities. Of course, not in the road, of course. But I'm very excited because Puyallup celebrates Meeker Days, and we thrive on community connection and festivals here. And so to create an opportunity to have the citizens really join in and bring their voice to the table to say what they'd like to see on that street, I'm really excited for the community connection piece there. So I'm really, as somebody who has cleaned up that street and has made it dirty and re-cleaned it back up with teens, I'm very excited to see this come to fruition for Puyallup because I think it'll be a real asset for us. So I just wanted to make that known as we're in the discovery process. So thank you very much, Nathan, for all your hard work behind the scenes.
Thank you, Councilmember Gilliam. Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. So Hans, or I'm not sure who I'm looking at here, the concern about the businesses having to close, that is something I've heard of quite a bit when we have the fair, the rodeo parade, the Meeker Days, whatever. So I don't know what can be done there, but I want to stress that point because it's even along Meridian. It's not just it's not Meeker. I've heard businesses along Meridian that struggle with that and feel impacts. And of course, we want to vibrate downtown and we want to spur people going into these businesses. So maybe this is a Meredith thing, economic development, but I can't stress that enough that we want to make sure we're keeping our brick and mortars solvent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Dorr. My concern, Hans, help me out on this, is that the funding on this preliminarily, it shows it being $5 to $6 million. Now, I understand to have a fully built out Festival Street, the utilities, all of that infrastructure has to be reworked. But my concern is that if we don't raise that amount, is it a zero sum situation where either we raise it or we don't get it at all? In other words, is there a phase in ability to, let's say, $1 million? What can we do for 1 million? They can start it as a Festival Street with the Cornforth development that's hopefully going to break ground next year would be a nice, I think would be a very aggressive, but nevertheless would be very positive. You know, the thought of having maybe trees or having something along there, one of the amenities that we could have a Festival Street for a weekend or something along that lines, or will it have to be fully operational for the $5-6 million for us to do that? Can you help me out?
Well, I would say right now in the planning phase, that's the time to think about that, to think about what your potential funding plan is and what are your sources. It's certainly cheaper to do it all at once, I will say. If we start doing piecemeal parts there, you're going to have some temporary aspects that are going to have to be recorrected later. But similar to what we did on 9th Street, we had a road that was deteriorating and the utilities were deteriorating. We went in first and redid the utilities. And then we put back just a skin asphalt there that wasn't expected to last for, 20 years like a normal road. And then we're coming back with the project to do the Festival Street. So there are aspects that can be done. I think particularly intriguing is if the Cornforth redevelopment starts to go faster than this project, there might be opportunities on the frontage area in front of that development to implement a Festival Street there and then do the remainder part, the part kind of, left to Meridian at a later one. So I think that's a valid case, to look at and stuff to see. But I'm actually hopeful that we will be able to cobble together the funds for the full $5 to $6 million. But it's also important, I think, then in the scoping to think, what is the right amount? Like if you can get a really good Festival Street and 4 million, and that's about what you can raise, is that good enough? No, so it's a lot of things to consider, but I do think that's part of it.
I would just rather, I think all my colleagues know my feeling on the number of charrettes that have been done in this community. A charrette if you're
Mhm.
not knowledgeable of that, is kind of a rendition, a version of someone's vision of what a community will look like in the future with developments in your downtown, parkways, festival streets, pavilions, concert venues, et cetera. That has been done several times in Puyallup over the last 40, 50 years. In fact, if you go back and look at some of those, you would just be blown away at the visions that people have had for Puyallup that have never come true. And I am concerned that, a festival street, if the only way we move forward is with $5, $6 million, and we don't get that, we don't get a festival street. I would rather have some way to phase it in. And if there is a way to say, look at this, and it can be even better if we put additional funds in. You follow that
I do.
logic?
Yes.
So long as you understand that it's kind of a dance, you've got to gauge the viability, because you're probably absolutely correct that the cheapest way to do it is right now, all up front, as opposed to in piecemeal. But there may come a time where we don't have much of an option. So
Understood.
just be cognizant of that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. If there are no further comments, we will now move on to the consent agenda. Thank you. And I want to thank the consultant, Nathan, for your presentation too. Thank you for your patience last time.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. With that, let's move on to the consent agenda. Do I hear any issues regarding the items on the consent agenda? And if not, do I hear a motion to approve? Move approval.
Second.
Okay, it's been approved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll now move on to public hearing, and that's 4A on the agenda. It's on the moratorium adopted by emergency ordinance 3294 that we passed on December the 5th, 2023, and a consideration of facts and finding in support of the ordinance. So we have to have a public hearing on this. City Attorney Joe Beck, would you like to address this?
I will. I think it only requires a brief comment from me, but because you received the presentation on the ordinance that you passed at the meeting where the moratorium was passed, and this is an opportunity for the public to comment on this ordinance and on this moratorium. And it's also a requirement of state law that you adopt findings of fact. In your packet, there are proposed findings of fact. And what this does is it supports the moratorium on methadone clinics to give the city time to consider whether the current the last decision that council made on this issue is going to hold going forward, or whether the council wishes to tweak the zoning in this regard. And so what you will do going forward in this hearing is hear from the public. And then following that hearing and any discussion, if you agree with the findings of fact as presented, then it would simply be a motion to approve the findings of fact in support of the moratorium ordinance. There's no resolution or additional ordinance that's needed in this case.
Okay, thank you. With that, public hearing is open. Are there any individuals in the audience who would like to come forward and comment regarding the findings of fact in support of this ordinance? Seeing none, we'll move on for a motion. Is there a motion that we accept the findings of fact in support of the ordinance that we passed on December 5th, 2023, a moratorium regarding the emergency ordinance 23294?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, there's been approval and a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay, the motion to accept the findings of fact in support of that ordinance passed. Let's move on to number 5 on the agenda, which are ordinances. And this is the first reading of an ordinance granting franchise term renewal to the City of Tacoma Department of Public Utilities Water Division. City Attorney Beck, could you please brief us on this?
Thank you, Mayor. The city has numerous utilities that utilize our streets for their pipes and lines and the utilities that run through our streets. The city of Tacoma water utility is one of those. Some of their water lines run through our streets. And so they have a franchise with us. It's basically a master permit for their lines, their facilities to be in our streets. And that had 2 terms, 5-year renewal terms. It's already been renewed once for an initial 5-year term. And it is the point in time where a second, this will be the final renewal of 5 years has been requested. Staff's recommendation is that you adopt this ordinance, pass first reading tonight of an ordinance approving that renewal of their franchise with the city of Puyallup.
Okay, any questions of staff or the attorney by council members? Okay, hearing none. Do I hear a motion to actually, for a first reading, pass this ordinance granting franchise terms renewal to the City of Tacoma Department of Public Utilities?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Okay, motion passes. Let's move on to number 6 on the agenda, which are resolutions. These are an annual resolution amending the city's fee schedule. And City Clerk Dan Vessels, if he will introduce this resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a resolution to approve, as you mentioned, the city's annual fee schedule. My office reached out to the department director several months ago requesting feedback and proposed changes. What you have before you, along with the resolution as Exhibit A, is the list of those proposed changes, which would become effective upon approval February 1st.
Okay. Is there any questions on the part of the council members? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to accept the amending fee schedule as put forth?
Motion to approve.
Second?
A
Is there a
second.
second?
A second.
There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The resolution amending the city's fee schedule that we do annually has passed. Let's move on to number 7, which is other business. And these are the 2024, 2025 council committee appointments. There is on tab 7 of your notebook, you'll be seeing those committee assignments. As mayor, it's one of my jobs. Can be somewhat unfortunate that I'm not able to give everyone exactly what they would like, but my job is to give appointments on a variety of committees per request of the members. A lot of those are based on seniority and also trying to parse out things appropriately based on skills, experience, etc. And this is the slate that I have put forward is again on tab 7. I would ask that this be approved with the exception of the Flood Zone Advisory Committee. Currently has Councilmember Johnson. He's unable to make that meeting due to exterior obligations. And so I have asked Deputy Mayor King to go ahead and to take that position on that committee, and he has agreed to do that. So I'd like to have that substitute. So with that, council member, do you have a question? Or
I do. For our new council members, I wanted to check the Left Disability Board meeting because, and I don't have it in front of me. It used to meet on Thursday mornings and Councilmember Gilliam does have a day job. So I just wanted to check, to point that out. Thank you.
Councilmember Gillian, would that be a conflict? Would you be able to do that?
That is a conflict unless it is in the summer months.
Okay.
Mayor Castema,
Yes.
if I can address that. Pursuant to Puyallup Municipal Code, the left board meetings are held on an as-needed basis. So those meetings, should they arise, would be coordinated with the availability of the members of the left board as well as the council appointees.
Thank you. So, as more of a senior member of the council, I will say that I have found that on those as-needed basis for scheduling committees, they've been very flexible based on your schedule. And that they, it's paramount that you are there. So I think that you'll be in the driver's seat regarding when those will take place.
In that case, I do not have a problem.
Okay. Deputy Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to mention regarding the left disability board, as a previous member, according to this, we have always met in the evenings over the past 2 years. So just to give you a heads up, Councilmember Gilliam, you should be okay.
Okay, a little bit of experience there. Thank you. So do I hear a motion to accept?
Motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Those nay. Okay, with that, the committee assignments will go forward. We're going to move on to reports, but keep in mind that we have an executive session this evening. And just for the public's knowledge, we go into executive session oftentimes to discuss legal matters pertaining to the city that tend to be more on the confidential side. With this evening, we're going to retire to executive session to consider the minimum price at which real estate will be offered for sale or lease on the part of the city. And that executive session is expected to last at least 1 hour. But before we do that, we're going to have council member reports and city managers reports. But I just want members to be not cognizant of the fact that we have about an hour to probably an hour and a half's worth of work after these reports. So with that, I'd like to have the city manager. You would like to give your comments?
Yeah, just very brief. Your next meeting is on February 6th, and the 3 items at this point that we anticipate coming before you will be the an update on the teen zone at the library, tourism branding project, and then the 9th Avenue Festival Street project. So those are the 3 items at this point that we anticipate will be on your agenda. And I will reserve any other remarks for the next meeting in light of our executive session.
Thank you. I assume the 9th Avenue Festival Street, will that also include the fair?
I would hope that the fair would be here, yes, but I haven't confirmed that yet.
All right, excellent. We'll now go through council reports. We'll start with Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a short report. It's more personal observation and reflection. So first of all, I wanted to thank Ms. Gould, Nicole Gould, I believe that spoke this evening at Citizens Comments. I share in her frustration and at times a controlled anger on the good intentioned policy decisions from our state legislature 2 years ago on so many things that have caused 2 things to happen. The data shows it. It's not political. Look at the data. The data shows since these reforms, quote reforms, have been put in place, we've seen crime go up and arrests go down. And that's not a healthy combination for fact data policies. Now, so I share in her frustrations, but not just her frustration, that reflects thousands of others, many of which I've heard. The question is, what can we do about it? More than we've done already. And I'd like to petition the mayor to be thinking about that. What can we as a city do under the authority of our state legislature, because we are a city that's governed by the state, which we respect the protocol of authority, but there's an opportunity, I think, in a democratic system to find a way to protest or push back because of our loyalty exclusively to the citizens of Puyallup. We're not loyal to anybody else but the citizens of Puyallup. We were elected by them to represent their interests and to make sure that we're advocating on their interests, even if it means respectful pushback to those who maybe have good intentions. So I'd like to see our mayor and the council explore ways that would be out of the box thinking to address this and not just simply be bound by something that I believe is hindering our ability to protect and provide the best care we can for our residents. And furthermore, I might add that I believe it was not only a good intentioned with unintended consequences result, but I believe it was an overreach. There's a reason why a city municipality is called the Puyallup Police. It's not the Olympia Police or the Capitol Police. It's the Puyallup Police. Our citizens fund them to protect and their citizens to protect our residences and our businesses, and for a outside entity to impose things that would further increase crime and have morale and risk being plummeting, to me is an overreach that we have a responsibility, in my humble opinion, and maybe naive opinion, but perhaps common sense opinion, that says it's gone too far. So I want to make it publicly known to Mrs. Gould and Nicole and hundreds of others I've spoken to, business owners who are frustrated. And I say this with absolute respect to those policymakers who, voted for this. I don't hate them in any way. I just think they were mistaken. And I think the data should be reevaluated and reformed. So anyway, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to state that publicly and not sweep that under the rug. I know that you've had things to say about that, but I couldn't be silent and not respond to her comments to articulate my joining with her frustration in a respectful and civil way. And what can we do as a council in Puyallup, as a city in Puyallup, to address respectfully a way to protect and to further provide protection for our residents that we were elected to do. So the second thing I'd like to talk about is more observation. I really appreciated the transition from being former mayor to now be a council member. And I really appreciated, Mayor Castema, your observing you prior to taking this role and speaking with you over the probably 3 months in that transition, you and I meeting and kind of sharing that transition base was wonderful. And then wondering, how are you going to pick up the reins? Are you going to? What's it going to look like? And kind of this whole anticipation of what you're going to do. And just in the last couple of weeks, as I've observed from a distance, you have exceeded my expectations of leadership as a mayor, and I have no doubt that we're, equals in terms of colleagues, all of us. But as a team captain, I'm just super happy with the leadership you're taking. I have full confidence that you're going to, I think, bring up great issues for us to discuss, and that we collectively, for the most part, will probably support you on so many things because you've got a good handle what's going on. So well done early on, and congratulations on your term as mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Your comments are noted. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Appreciate the opportunity. As always, I will pass tonight. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. I also wanted to just do a shout out for Nicole Gould. She reached out to me for some support and she wanted to know how to find her voice. And after helping her walk through and getting her connected to help her feel supported, she reached back out and said, thank you, because if I didn't have a relationship with you, I wouldn't know how to navigate this. I wouldn't know how to do this. So I just want to commend my fellow city council members and mayor for us to stay available to our constituents, to make ourselves visible. And I also recognize that we're just here to serve. So I also want to continue to do a shout out for our city staff to be efficient. We now have iPads that they're constantly on the lookout for saving money and for being efficient. And so I wanted to do a shout out for our City Clerk Dan. Thank you for being ahead of the game and looking for ways to support the whole city, the whole team. And then our city manager, I am totally spacing on the name of his certification that he received, but he made it in record time because he's using his previous experience as assistant city manager, and that accumulated to where he could meet his goal ahead of time for excellence and service. And so I just wanted to do a shout out for our city manager. Our city staff are behind the scenes are absolutely phenomenal, and Puyallup is at 100% in the forefront of how we can support our citizens. So I'm just proud to be made aware, and I want to make sure that I also make our citizens aware of the hard work that it goes on behind the scenes. So I'm very grateful, and thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Gilliam. Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the interest of time, I'll pass.
Councilmember Whitting.
We've had several public comments tonight about the council member comments about the pursuit laws. And I just wanted to ask, we've got a legislative agenda and our lobbyists are working on this. This is on our legislative agenda, correct?
Yes.
And I would appreciate being kept informed of when those particular hearings are being held so that we can, as a team, maybe we could mobilize ourselves and go down and speak in person to those particular issues, because I just think it's, we just got to do something different to protect our citizens. The other thing I wanted to mention is during public comment tonight, we apparently, it's come to my attention that we've missed some Zoom folks online. So I always want to hear from the public, and if want to ask what we suggest. You know, we've kind of left somebody mute tonight, and maybe multiple somebodies. If they're still around, can we offer them the opportunity to take their 3 minutes?
I can comment regarding that. We don't have Zoom capability any longer. That is something that we haven't had this year. It was something we did during COVID. And then as the new year began, all testimony was written and went back to what it was pre-COVID. And on the site, it is very clear that it doesn't offer that any longer.
Oh, okay. I was unaware of that. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see, Deputy Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to recognize a comment that I received from a constituent here in our city that received exceptional service from one of our City Works staff members. So I just wanted to let our City Works director know, I only know the first name, goes by Tyler. He was given great comments about his service regarding some frozen pipe issues on some of the meters that were freezing up out there. And I told the constituent I would make sure that you knew. So please pass along the good word and good work that he has done during the freezing cold temperatures that we had, and very good to work with out there. So that's all I have for you tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Let me just state that regarding Nicole Gould's comment about the pursuit law, I believe that the comments made by council members this evening pretty much typify all the feelings that this community has towards what did happen with those pursuit laws. However, the original intent may have been good. The unintended consequences have been really disastrous. We've heard stories where actual incidents in this community where I met with a car dealer who said that someone pulled up to purchase a car in a motorcycle, and they parked the motorcycle right there in front of their dealership. And someone came up, grabbed the motorbike, They sped off with it. Police came by and that person sped back through and the police saw him and everyone saw him. And that person made an obscene gesture at the police and sped off on that motorcycle, knowing full well that the police could not pursue them. There was an actual case, I believe was on the 520 bridge, where a person who was evading, they had committed a crime, they were evading the scene, leaving, actually called 911 because a police officer was pursuing them. And they debated with the 911 operator that the policeman that was pursuing him was conducting an illegal act. And they said, well, what did you do? And the person was very upfront. They had committed a crime, but they were fully aware, however, that that police officer could not pursue them. That is a theater of the absurd. And I believe that, and I would ask staff members, please, apprise members through our lobbyists that we have of when those committee hearings do come up so that people do have the opportunity. And I could go on and on with stories about the pursuit laws and how I would agree with our police chief that things have become almost too much away from the victims, people who actually suffer crime after crime, and too much to the perpetrators. And I think that that balance, there needs to be a balance that is that comes about, be restored or whatever term you want to use. There has to be a change in the policy. I appreciate Councilmember Gilliam's comment about efficiencies. I believe we are trying to be as efficient as we can in Puyallup. The members, she mentions that we're all receiving iPads. Now, an iPad may sound like, well, that's an electronic device. How could it be more expensive? Until you look into all of the paperwork that we are presented as council members, the expense of putting all this paperwork together, to actually putting it in the binders, staff time, probably a fairly sizable size is gone into all of the paperwork that goes into this. And we're able to do it electronically now to where it updates immediately without any of that massive amount of paperwork and staff time. And I think we will do the best in Puyallup as always to make sure that we just don't add more and more staff to accommodate growth, but instead think of ways to become much more efficient and live within a budget. And I am very proud to say that over the last 7 years, whereas the inflation in the United States has gone up, I believe almost 29% over the last 7 years, that the budget in Puyallup has only gone up about 4%. We have kept it the property tax, has only gone up about 4%. We have tried to keep it as minimal as we possibly can. And of your property tax bill that you receive, only 11% of that is actually to the city. The rest goes to school districts, to the county, to the state, and to the fire district. So we're trying to be as efficient as we possibly can. And I think anytime that a council member observes that, we should point it out, because by golly, the people of this town, they deserve the best management possible. And I think we are delivering and giving some of the best management in Washington State. And I dare say that I think we are going to eventually apply for a national award and start competing with the best in the nation. And that really is the goal of people within the city, that you're very proud of all the city employees. They operate with pride. They're always looking for ways to be more efficient. With that in mind, I had a discussion with a community member the other day, and I want to say this, I'm very sincere about this. The person said that they really believe with this council that was passed, that was elected, the younger individuals, I know I'm getting a little long in the tooth, but the younger individuals too, and all of the people we have coming on board, they really believe, and with our staff, that this is probably the zenith. This is a very high point for the city of Puyallup. And I think there are a lot of high expectations. I am completely confident that we're capable of fulfilling those expectations. And we have two former mayors on the council. Just that is just really amazing. And then myself, three individuals who have been in these positions know what that's like. And we have, future mayor to my left, future mayor to my right, and future mayors right on down the line. We have good leadership in this community, and I really think we should aim extremely high. I will end on this because I do know we have to get to executive session, but I am reading a book about the history of Puyallup written by Andy Anderson's wife, who, is very much involved in history in Puyallup. And I can tell you that Puyallup, there were leaders in this community in the 1800s, late 1800s, who had tremendous vision for Puyallup, who really, you had 8 lumber mills in downtown Puyallup. This was the place for the best berries, all in Washington. You came here, you had the hops, a tremendous amount of wealth, and they really had a tremendous vision for this community. And I really think that that needs to be what we have for this community, that Puyallup can be that place that all of the area, all the neighborhoods of Puyallup, everyone, they come to our downtown area to be with each other, to learn more, explore, connect with other individuals, and make it a very, very special place that we already know it is, but we can even make it more special. So I just want to say I'm very pleased and complimented that we have the council that we have. So with that, I would like now to move into executive session. And just so that we're going to city clerk, this will be for 1 hour. Please notify us when that is up. And if we need more time, we'll ask for that extension. With that, we'll go into executive session.
And Mr. Mayor, just for the public, there's no action expected following that meeting, following that.
Thank you.
Good evening. The time is 9:20 PM. The city clerk is announcing that the mayor has extended the executive session an additional 30 minutes. Puyallup City Clerk notes the time is 9:50, and per Mayor Casma, the executive session is being extended for an additional 30 minutes. The city clerk notes the time is now 10:10 p.m. The executive session has ended. Thus concludes the Puyallup City Council meeting for Tuesday, January 23rd. Time of adjournment is 10:10 p.m.